normally on a birth and occasion such as this, I would talk about vision, and but it struck me that for the last 6 or 7 weeks we've been talking vision and strategy, especially strategy in the life of the church. What is it that God is trying to build us into? He's trying to build the family of God in which He can invite the orphans and the lonely of this lonely planet and set them in families. That passage out of Psalms 68, I think, where it talks about God is going to be a father to the fatherless, and He's going to set the orphans and the lonelies into families. That's what God is wanting to build today. Not your megapolises, not your mega churches. In saying that, I don't think that God wants us to stay as a small community. I believe that He wants us to influence. It says in another passage in Isaiah, it says there that the least of you shall become 1,000, and so I never think in anything less than that. Nevertheless, the strategy, the way in which God wants us to form, is to form a family in which God can set people. And if we aim for the 1,000 and don't realize that God is wanting us to be family, then you can end up with a crowd, and I've done that in the past, where I've ended up with a crowd, quickly gathering a crowd. By the 4th year of a previous church that I led, one of my early day churches, by the 4th year, had just about 300 people in the church, and so we had a crowd, but God is wanting to form a family, and wanting He wants us to catch one another's hearts and place us in each other's hearts so that we feel like family when we're together, and that's true. You know, whenever we see each other, that is the feeling that I get, and I hope it's the feeling that you get when you see me. You know, when I come knocking on your door, and I hope you don't go, uh-oh. You know, unless of course you've been a naughty boy, then that happens in families too. You know, when the dad comes knocking on the door, but I hope you feel a sense of family. Hope you, even if you were to be here for a while and were to think, "No, this church really isn't for me after all," and to go elsewhere, I hope you would never think, "Oh, here comes Paul. I'll just go onto the other side of the street." You know, if one of my children, who I'm in touch with all the time, if one of them were ever to do that, "Here comes Dad, I'm going on the other side of the street," I would be thinking one of two things. I would be thinking, "What are you up to?" or I'd be thinking, "What have I done? You know, what have I done?" And so, you know, we've had a number of people that have come and gone, and over the period of time, I still love every single one of them, and so that's just how it is with me. So anyway, we've been talking strategy, and we've been talking family. Fathers being the head of the home, mothers being the heart of the home, and children being the hope of the home. And we've looked in Scripture a lot at fathers. You know, where have all the fathers gone? Paul says, there are not many fathers. Where are the fathers? Where are the fathers? Where are the fathers in homes? Where are the fathers in church? Where are the fathers in society? These politicians, they're not acting like fathers. They're acting like control freaks. They're just out to control and to manipulate, and we want fathers. We need fathers in society. We need to have a different model. God's got a different strategy that He's trying to work into families and into homes and into society. The great prophetic word in Malachi, where before God silenced Himself for 400 years, the great prophetic word was that He would draw the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers, and that's something to do with the spirit of Elijah. I believe that we've got the spirit of Elijah here today. We've got that here today, that we're a part of that, and so we want to see hearts being drawn one to another. I'm not getting much response. Anyone talk to me today? All right. Thank you very much. Okay. And been talking a lot about fathers. But, we need mothers too. Every family needs mothers, a mother. And in the homes or in the families where you have extended families, then there are many mothers. You've got grandmothers and great-grandmothers, and they all extend influence throughout the family. And so God is wanting that kind of thing to happen within the church. And so come with me, please, to a passage that can create some conflict, certainly in some circles creates a lot of conflict. Come with me to 1 Timothy chapter 2. 1 Timothy, the second chapter. And, this is that passage where it says that we might read it. I want you to see the context of this chapter. Have a look at chapter 2 and verse 1 of 1 Timothy. Have you not got it yet? Everybody's got it. Good. Okay. All right. So 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. I urge then, first of all, that requests, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for everyone, for kings and all those in authority. So what is the context? The context of this passage is prayer. Am I right? Am I right? The context is prayer. All right, let's just jump ahead a little bit, and we'll go to verse 8. He says, I want men everywhere to lift up holy hands in prayer. Have you got that? So we're still talking about prayer. Okay. And he says, and I also want women to dress modestly with decency and propriety, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds appropriate for women who profess to worship God. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority. Let me give you another word for what is contained within the Greek there. When it says authority, it's talking about I don't permit a woman to dominate. To dominate. Okay, so we're talking about dominatrixes. And if you want to have some idea, I don't want to get into this too deeply, but if you don't understand the context into which Paul is writing, where you have got in Ephesus the temple worship, where Diana is worshipped, and where they have temple prostitutes and women who are dominatrixes within society, extending their power and influence and trying to dominate men, much of the feminist agenda is pushing today. All right. For Adam was formed first, and then Eve, and Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women, now listen to this now. But women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, holiness, and propriety. Just keep your Bibles with you. We're going to turn to another passage in a second. So the context is to do with prayer. The context is to do with prayer. Now, when men pray different to how women pray. We're just different. Men pray. David said, blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. When men pray, he says, I want all men everywhere to lift up holy hands in prayer. So when men pray, it is an act of warfare. It's an act of battle. It is surrendering to God, but at the same time, even my fingers are being trained for warfare. Rah! 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 Felt like Austin Powers there for a second. Rah! when men are in prayer, it's different to women. But when women pray, it's all about birthing something. And only women have got it like that. When women pray, it's travail. When women pray, it's yearning. When women pray, it's men can learn something from women because women are being so different to us. We're used to putting our hands up. We're used to being on the offensive. We're used to being aggressive. When women want to get something happening, it gets them deep, hits them deep down inside until the point comes where they are earnestly travailing and in prayer until that which has been placed within them, the seed of life, the seed of hope, until that very thing can come to pass. That's why we need women. Only women have got it like that. That's why we need women to be searching and seeking and praying and yearning and burning until things get born, until things come about, until things take place. All right. Now let's go to 1 Samuel. Back in the Old. I like taking the New Testament and then going to the Old Testament and seeing what is in the Old Testament, how it connects to what is in the New Testament, because the new is in the old contained, and the old is in the new explained. There you go. So the first person that said that, I think, was Augustine. All right. St. Augustine, one of my favorites. Chapter. Have you got 1 Samuel? Chapter 1. There was a certain man from Mattheaim who went off to buy some... No, I'm not doing that. There was a certain man from Rephaim, a Zophite, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, and the son of Zuph, and an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. And year after year this man went up from his town to worship and sacrificed to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because she was his favorite, and he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. And because the Lord had closed her womb, her rival, Peninnah, kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, would say to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" Once, when they'd finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up, and now Eli the priest was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the temple. And in bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And she made a vow, saying, "O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." And as she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth, and Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. And Eli thought she was drunk, and said to her, "How long will you keep on getting drunk? Get rid of your wine." "Not so, my lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord." You got to understand the pouring of your soul out to the Lord. When the situation is against you, when you go to bed at night and everything seems normal, and you wake up the next day and everything has changed. You open the door and take a step outside and the whole world has changed. You open the door and businesses are shut. You step outside and there's codes where you've got to sign into. You step outside and you're being forced to distance yourself. You step outside and people are wearing masks so that you can't even read their faces. Sasha and I were at a restaurant yesterday and we were being served by this young lady and she was talking to us, and I thought, boy, she seems really angry and really mean. But you couldn't really tell because the mask stopped me seeing two-thirds, possibly, of her face. And so it turned out that she wasn't being mean and nasty at all. It was just her manner. And only when I could see her face was I able to realize that she was actually being quite nice. She was smiling underneath those words. You wake up in the morning and you're being forced to isolate. And when you get up and the world has changed around you, you've got to pour your soul out to the Lord. Just your normal pitter-patter, namby-pamby prayers is no longer going to cut it. When you've been going through your life and you think it's just going to be like this, and suddenly something happens and you find out it's not like that. It's not how you've been thinking it would be. It's not turning out how you wanted it to turn out. Things are going wrong. Things are turned upside down. That is when you've got to start pouring your soul out to the Lord. And if you don't pour your soul out to the Lord, then what happens is that you build up with frustration and anger and a sense of injustice in life. This builds up within you, and you end up being angry at people who can't do anything about the situation. You end up being angry at people who normally you would be nice to. But because they've had an injection, now you're angry with them. Or because they want you to have an injection, now you're angry with them. And it doesn't matter what side of the room you're on. It doesn't matter what side of the argument you're on. Everybody is angry at everybody. And if you don't learn to pour your soul out to God, then that stuff will just build up within you, and it will have you fussing and quarreling and getting angry and being nasty and being mean to people who can't do anything about your situation. And you find nowadays even nice people are being nasty. People who before just put up photos of little pussycats are now getting on there and they're going fake news, and they're doing all sorts of nasty things, mocking people and putting people down and doing all kinds of things on account of the shock factor and the inability to be able to cope factor. You got to learn to be able to pour your soul out to God, like Hannah was doing here. She's pouring her soul out to God. She's pouring it out. She's pouring it out. She is pouring it out. She is in such grief. She's in such torment. It just seems like life isn't fair. And so she's pouring her soul out to God. You got to do that. You got to do that. If you don't do that, you're going to just end up being miserable. If you don't do that, you won't have the resources and the energy to be able to cope with the changes that are coming upon us. If you don't do that, you won't be able to enjoy your family, and you won't be able to enjoy your children. You won't be able to enjoy church, and you won't be able to enjoy God if you don't do that. You got to pour your soul out. You got to pour your soul out. Your soul out. You know what your soul is? Your soul is that thing that gives you the capacity to have self-awareness, self-consciousness, self-understanding. It is that self. It is that central identity. All of that has got to be poured out before God. All of that. That's the part of you that gets hurt when somebody rejects you. That's the part of you that gets hurt when somebody talks about you behind your back. That's the part of you. It's your identity. Why does it hurt so much? It's because it's your identity. They're attacking who you are. They're offending who you are. That's what's got to come out before God. That's men. Men, what do men do? We lift up holy hands in prayer. We want to fight. We want to get physical. Let's get physical. That's where we want to get. We want to do something. We want to build something. We want to make something. We want to get our hands on something. Where is he? Let me get him. Just get my hands on him. For this, you've got to pour your soul out. You've got to pour your soul out to God. All right. And then it says, I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I'm not a secular woman. I've been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. And Eli answered and said, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you've asked of him. And she said, may your servant find favor in your eyes. And then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast, because she poured out her soul until she got her answer. That's what women do. They don't stop, men, until they get their answer. They don't stop. They don't give up. That's the wonderful thing about a woman. We say, I'm going fishing. That's not the ladies. Not the ladies. They won't stop. They'll be nagging, and I'm getting in trouble now. And you think it's all over, but no. You thought you'd had that conversation. No, it's still going. It's still happening. It's still going. They haven't completely poured out their soul yet. So you're still going to hear. All right. Early the next morning they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah, and Elkanah lay with Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And so in the course of time Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord of him. All right. God, we just pray that your hand will be upon the preaching of your word today, and that you will take the things that you've placed in my heart and drive them deep into the soul of every one of us. And we're here looking at a woman named Hannah. But God, there is nothing in your word that isn't meant for all of us to hear, and for all of us to receive, and for all of us to learn from, and for all of us to grow from. And so I pray that you will take this word and ignite it within our hearts and cause us to be formed into the people that you've called us to be. Okay, so the context of the book of Samuel is that it's talking about the history of Israel in between the times of Moses and Joshua and the establishment of Israel within the land, and later to come the kings of Israel. You've got Joshua dying, and then you've got a series of judges that come along, written about in the book of Judges, and this is a time of the Judges is like the wild, wild west. It's like quick draw in the main streets, and that's what it's like. There's very little rule taking place, and everybody. In fact, the very last verse of the book of Judges is that they had no king in their time, and everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And whenever you've got, sounds like the church, but wherever you've got everybody doing what was right within their own eyes, there you've got anarchy. There you have got trouble. There you've got people who are just saying, well, I think God's saying this, and somebody over here says, well, God's saying that, and so this one shoots off that way, and that one shoots off that way, and there's no leadership. There's no leadership. And so this is also the time where Naomi comes along and she's forced because of a famine to go off into Moab, and then she goes back to Bethlehem, and so she's there one minute, and she's there the next minute, and she's angry, and she's bitter, and she's frustrated, and she's got bitterness of soul, and she's so much like how we are today, where people are here, there, and everywhere, and they're angry and bitter, and there's a bitterness of soul that is around us, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's wanting the Lord's blessing, and she eventually gets the Lord's blessing, but she's carrying a lot of trouble around with her, and this is the time in which the book of Samuel starts to get written. We haven't got the kings yet, but the people are wanting a king. God doesn't want them to have a king because God saw himself as king. God was wanting things to be a theocratic government, a theocratic entity where he said what went, and where everybody came before him to find out his direction for their lives. That's how he wanted it to be. And so when they said, we want to have a king and be like the other nations, it was a very painful thing for them to be saying. And we know when we come to later to the book of Kings, well, and Samuel as well, where he talks about Saul being made king, we know that when King Saul came along, that was a very painful proposition, a very painful time. And it's just like the world that we're in today. Transition periods are painful periods. Samuel is written in a time of transition. Samuel has been written where they're neither this nor are they that. They're neither the people like they were when Moses was leading them or when Joshua strongly led them, and they're not yet the people that are going to be there when David is leading them. They're in transition. They're in the middle. They don't know what's going to be happening. They're wanting things to be put in order, but things are not in order. Things are out of order. And Hannah comes along at a time where God is wanting to bring things into order, because there has been pain and suffering, and God is needing to bring things into order. And so he starts getting a woman who has had no seed, who has been barren, who has been empty, who has had nothing going on in her life, to start yearning for something to take place. Come with me into Genesis chapter 3. Genesis, first book of the Bible. If you don't know that, then come see me later, we'll get you saved. Genesis chapter 3. And we'll read verse 16. To the woman, God said. So we've got a bad situation. Adam and Eve have sinned. Eve sinned because she was deceived. We read about that in 1 Timothy, remember? She sinned because she was deceived. Adam sinned because he chose deliberately to go against what he knew God wanted him to do. And so she became a sinner, but Adam brought the human race into sin. Sin entered through a man, Adam. And so we've got a bad situation. And God, as his want, always comes into bad situations in order to try to make them good again. And so he's reading out here these these curses, and the curse is coming upon the snake, and the curse is coming upon the land, and the curse is coming upon Adam. Adam doesn't get left out of this. This is true egalitarianism taking place here, and everybody's included, and Eve is being spoken to here, and God is trying to make things right. So what sounds like a curse is actually a redemptive platform in which God is wanting to bring good things out of evil, good things out of bad. God always does that. Way back at the beginning, in the chaos of the universe and the chaos of the world, it says, in the beginning, God was there, and the Spirit hovered over the chaos, a tohu wa bohu of the world, over the chaos of the world, and God spoke into it and said, "Let there be light." And it says, He spoke into it, and the darkness comprehended it not, because when you're in darkness, you don't comprehend light. And so He spoke into it and brought order out of chaos. You think that in this current situation where there is chaos everywhere, that God isn't speaking a word? That God isn't doing something right now? That God is not wanting to bring order out of the chaotic situation that the world is in, where we've got economic breakdown, and we've got families being broken down, and you're seeing some people being kept on one side of the border, and they're not allowed to go to see their family on the other side of the border. And do you think that God isn't going to have something to say about that, and isn't going to want to bring order into the situation? And the reason why we're feeling pain, and why we're feeling sorrow, and why we're feeling sadness, and why we're feeling the struggle that is going on around us is because God is wanting to raise up a people who are willing to pray and who will seek His face and pour out their souls to the Lord to bring about a difference. And it may well be that the reason why we have not as yet been pouring out our souls to the level in which we are about to see change, it may well be that we haven't yet suffered enough pain. Because if there is anything that causes us to pour out our souls, it is when we are in pain. For the last 30 years, in our beautiful land of Australia, the church has just found itself going to sleep because it's all been so easy. It's all been so smooth. And as soon as we get a little bit of pain, everybody's praying, "Oh God, make it go back to how it was." Because we like being asleep. We like being, we might be Pentecostals, we might have oil in our vase, but we still like having a little snooze. $99 bottles of beer. Oh, 99. Oh, you said 99. I thought it was Jen saying 99. I'm just glad somebody's talking to me. All right. He says to Eve, to the woman he said, "I'll greatly increase your pain in childbearing." What a funny text that is in Timothy, where it says women will be saved through childbearing. Through childbearing. Your pain will increase. So we're talking about multiplied levels of pain. There's no anesthesia. There's no connecting you up to an IV trip. There's no epidural. There's no gas when you're giving birth to these babies that are going to be coming along. It's just you and the Lord. And hopefully your husband's nearby, but I got my doubts about that. He'll be out catching the next woolly mammoth or something. And I'll put here we go. And with pain you'll give birth to children, and your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So desire and pain go together. Passion and pain, desire and pain. Pain is an incredible motivator. Passion also is an incredible motivator. So the pain will push you to pour out your soul to God. The passion will push you to want to give birth to the baby. You will have the passion for your husband again once you've forgotten about the pain of giving the baby. If you didn't have the resurrection of passion, that'd be the last time you're ever going to be given birth. If all you had was pain and no passion, that's the last baby ever being born on this earth. But because of the resurrection of passion, and your desire will be for your husband, so there is progress. And you've got to have the two. In Acts chapter 1 and verse 3, it talks there about Christ and the crucifixion and everything that he went through. And in Acts chapter 1, verse 3, Dr. Luke calls it his passion. His passion. What a crazy thing to call what he went through upon the cross, to call it his passion. But the two, the pain and desire, passion, fit together, dwell together. And so the Word of God says that Jesus, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, went through everything that he went through. I mean, what does a man dying upon the cross 2,000 years ago, a young man dying on the cross 2,000 years ago, have to do with the crazy stuff that is going on in the world today? Everything. Good answer. It's got everything to do with what is going on through the world today. But whenever crazy stuff like what's going on takes place, people start asking the question, where's God? Where's God? As if God disappears, as if he's left the building, as if he's tried to escape through the fire escape, try to leave through the back door. Where's God when tough times are happening? God is always there in times of chaos. He was there right back at the beginning in the chaos. He was there on the cross in the chaos, making everything right for the joy that was set before him. That's you. That's me. That's you who's before him. Consider this. You are the only anesthetic Jesus needed for him to go through all that. You're the only anesthetic that he needed for him to endure the pain and the trial of the crucifixion. You who say you don't like yourself. You who say, I think I might put an end to it all. It was for you that Jesus went through all of that. You who say, I don't think, my nose is the right shape. Who look at ourselves in the mirror, who judge ourselves according to how many people like us on Instagram. Who cares how many people like you on Instagram? It was for you that Jesus, went through what he went through. That's the joy that was set before him, that stirred him to go through all of the pain, to give birth to the church, which is what you are. And then it says, and he shall rule over you. That's not talking about dominating. That's not talking about what Paul is warning against, where one person, females in this count, on account of the temple worship, the worship of Diana back then, dominating. It's not talking about Adam dominating Eve. It's talking about him covering her and protecting her and being there for her. Lifting up holy hands in prayer for her so that she can give birth. When you look at Hannah, there you see a woman who year after year had been going up to the temple. This was something they did every year. This was their normal. But God needed to have something happen that was not normal. Out of their ordinary, God needed to bring about something extraordinary. And so what God does is he looks at Hannah and he says, she's not hungry enough. She'd like a child. She'd want a baby, but she doesn't want it enough yet. Like a lot of people around today. We want change, but we don't want it enough. And so God sends somebody to provoke her, and that ministry of provocation comes through Peninnah. Excuse me. And Hannah looks at Peninnah. Hannah looks at Peninnah, and she says, how come you're blessed and I'm not blessed? We've both got the same husband. I'm every bit as much a woman as you are, and yet you're blessed and I'm not blessed. And it provoked her. You know, when we are preaching, us preachers are trying to provoke people. We are trying to poke you and provoke you and get something happening in your life. But I know you all like me. I know you all think I'm just the nicest guy that you've ever met. You went silent for a minute there, but it's most likely not the person that you like that is going to be provoking you. It's going to be some irritating, nasty, two-faced, blessed person that is going to get on your nerves and drive you to the place where you're going to be pouring out your soul to the Lord. And so God will send along somebody that you don't like. He'll put somebody in your life that you would rather not have there. He'll have somebody in your life that you're trying to get away from. He'll put somebody in your life that keeps on bringing up your past and bringing up your shame. Hannah was already feeling ashamed. She was already feeling shame, and the reason why she was feeling shame is because to a Bible woman, which is what Paul is trying to get the ladies to become. Not women that are on Instagram trying to make themselves look all kind of, not injecting themselves so that he's trying to get them to think like a Bible woman. And Bible women believed that they, when they gave birth to a child, would be bringing in the seed that would crush the serpent's head. In other words, would be producing the child that would destroy the curse. And ever since Eve believed that she would be giving birth to the seed that would destroy the serpent's head. Every Bible woman believed that they were going to be producing the Messiah. They all believed they were going to be Mary. And so they weren't like the women of today. The women who plan out how many children they're going to have. Who say, well, I can afford to look after 2 children or 3 children or 4 children. And do I dare? and those who are willing to dispose of their babies, not because they've been raped, not because of some catastrophic situation that they've been through, but just because it's inconvenient. This is what is going on today. And we make it easy for that kind of thinking to go on because we don't think like Bible women. We don't think, what if I am going to be giving birth to the future? We don't think in terms like that what we give birth to is the future. And God needed Hannah to get right to the place where she was yearning to have something take place that only God realized, only God knew was going to make everything different. Not just there in Israel, but everything throughout the world. Not just for Hannah's life, not just for Hannah, but Hannah was going to be pouring her soul out to God until she got what was necessary for her barren womb to receive the seed that would give birth to a child that would bring about the next dynasty, that would bring about David, that would bring about Jesus. That everything hung upon her getting her heart to the place where she was pouring her soul out to God, pouring it out to God, pouring it out. And so you've got to have the intricate combination, the mixture. The divine alchemist has to come and get just the right amount of pain and just the right amount of passion and bring it together and mix it up so that you are going to be pouring out your soul to God and getting your miracle. Now get this. When they go up to the temple, when they step into the temple, it mentions that Hophni and Phinehas are there. Hophni and Phinehas, they're on the take. They're trying to get as much out of this ministry lark as they can possibly find. They're on the take. I know of one, no, I won't do that. They're trying to get all they can. And so they're taking all the money and they're having as many affairs as they can possibly have. It's so much like the church today, it's embarrassing. But it's all going on. Nowadays, it's being reported as entertainment. That's what the news is using as their entertainment now. You know, just like in the Colosseum. They're looking for people to fry. You know, I'm not saying we should have done it. Shouldn't have done it. But that's what the news is doing. Everybody's finding out about it. Happening all around. Here, there, and everywhere. And so she's going into this situation. There's Hophni, there's Phinehas, there's Eli. It's a bad place. And you would think, wouldn't you, that if she had any sense, she'd go find another church where they had good leaders and good pastors, but she didn't. She went there into a bad place. And she didn't say to Eli, and she didn't say to Hophni and Phinehas, no, I'm not giving my offerings, and I'm not giving my prayers before you guys, because you guys, you stink. You're talking about me being drunk. What about you? You're all drunks. And she didn't say any of that because she was there to meet with God. Can God meet you in a bad place? Yes, He can. You're wondering why it is that these churches that are being led by charlatans, how they get so big? Well, God loves those people, every single one of them in that place. And God has consistently, I told you before, out of Genesis, right from the very beginning, God is into doing things in a bad place, in a bad situation. You know, by the way, none of us are perfect. So if you If you want to know about the imperfection of a leader, you're looking at one right here. I'm just here doing what God tells me to do in spite of my failures of the past. And so she's in there and she's pouring out her soul to God. And she's pouring out her soul to God so desperately that she has run out of voice, and she is now just mouthing to God, just mouthing unutterable words. Some have said she was speaking in tongues, but whatever it was, they were unutterable words, to the place where Eli looked at her and believed that she was drunk. Just like when the Spirit of God fell on the day of Pentecost, they looked at these guys and they said, they're drunk. How many of us pour out our souls to God and pray to the place where people look at us and they think that we're drunk? How many of us are willing to be crying out to God to the place where we forget about ourselves and we are so in the presence of God that anybody looking at us would think, you guys are drunk, you're sozzled, you've been on the gin, you've been on the whiskey, and some of you look like you've been on the meths. It's bad. It's bad. Eli was looking at her saying, this is bad what you're doing. She said, no, I am not a drunk. I am not a secular woman. I am not someone who worships at heathen altars. I am a woman of God, and I'm holding on for the promise, for what God has promised, the seed of the woman, and I have not as yet been able to have the seed. She was in pain, but she wasn't thinking of herself. She was so committed and determined to see the promise fulfilled through her that she was willing to offer that child to God, not to keep that child for herself. She'd been experiencing the pain of not having that for which she already had love. She was already experiencing the pain of someone without somebody to love. She had the love. She had the feminine desires. She had the motherly instincts. But there was no little baby to tuck into bed at night. It was all there. But she was so determined that she would have this promise come through for her life, that this promise would be fulfilled in her life, that she was willing to give that child up to God as long as she could see things change. Now, what was the thing that made this year different to any previous year that she'd been going up to God? The only difference was she poured out her soul. She poured out her soul. She poured. All the other years did the religious duty. All the other years did the ordinary thing. Just carried her pain. Just carried her ache. And carried it back home again. This year, she poured it out to God. She poured it out. She poured it out. She poured it out. I don't know, a few weeks ago we were in worship and I heard weeping in our congregation going on. I don't know if anybody was weeping because I keep my eyes closed, so I don't know what you're all doing. I can just hear things. And on this morning I heard weeping, and I'm thinking, boy, I don't know if I've been in church where there's been a weeping song, where there's been a weeping spirit. You hear about these things where there was weeping. And there were other people that were laughing. I could hear other people laughing, but I could also hear people weeping, pouring out their soul to God, pouring out your soul to God. Why don't we close our eyes? Lord, you see us here today. You hear us. You know we've got our desires. You know we've got our frustrations and our yearnings and our wantings and our needings. Now, God, I pray that you will take us and that you will magnify the desires that you have, that you want to place within us, that you see there, that you magnify those things until we get what Hannah got, until we see what can be. We've been talking, God, about future church, about the church that you want us to become. Oh, we need to birth that. We need to break through into that. We need to make that happen. I pray for every single person here. I know we've all got our individual things that we want to see take place, and there are incredible needs that are present here in our midst, but there's also an incredible need that we have within our world at the moment. Well, we've been facing this Orwellian situation in our world, and so much control taking place. God, hear our prayers and hear our cries, and as we pour out our soul before you, that you would bring about a significant enough move of the Spirit that we would see good results for all of the pain that people have been going through, that we would see people coming into the kingdom for all of the pain that we've been going through, that we would see people asking the right questions and not heading down the wrong laneways of life, that we would see people coming through, that people, if you need to increase the pain in the world, then let it be. If you need there to be greater pain and greater suffering to bring people to their knees, to bring about the revival that we desire to see, then let it be. We want to see provocation where it's necessary. But God, we also pray that you would use us and cause us to bring about a birthing of something into the world that the likes that Port Noarlunga and the southern suburbs have never seen before, and that we would make a radical change in the world around us. And everybody said, Amen.